To the conflict in the Middle East now, and Israel has launched airstrikes in and around the ancient Lebanese city of Baalbek, hours after issuing an evacuation warning. Israel says it's targeting Hezbollah. The region is known as a stronghold of the militants. Around 80,000 people live in the city, and many fled there to take refuge from Israeli bombardment in Lebanon's south. Now, Baalbek is known for its Roman temples, which are a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Journalist Stella Mena is in Beirut for us. Stella, what's the situation in Baalbek right now? What do we know?
The Israeli army had carried out a series of airstrikes on Baalbek and the surrounding villages. Local journalists who are reporting on the ground say that they have witnessed at least 9 attacks. It seems like this first wave of airstrikes has now stopped, but we do not know if Israel might target the area again throughout the next couple of hours. We also don't have any reports yet on casualties. The attacks and airstrikes on Baalbek came approximately 4 hours after Israel had ordered the entire city to evacuate. This is the first time that the Israeli army has sent out these warnings and called on an entire city to be evacuated. Within this area are also the ancient Roman temples that are one of the largest worldwide, and they are part of the UNESCO World Heritage. The people in Baalbek took this warning quite serious. Thousands of them tried to leave the city, which caused massive traffic jams on the main roads that take outside of Baalbek.
Baalbek is in the east of the country. It's about 100 kilometers from Israel's border, relatively far. Why is this city so significant for Israel?
Well, the Israeli army says that it has targeted a fuel depot by Hezbollah. Yet again, it is a statement coming from a party involved in the war, so we cannot verify at the moment whether this is true or not. What we can say is that the Bekaa Valley, this region in the east of Lebanon, where Baalbek is situated in, is an area where Hezbollah is quite strong. But why an entire city now had to be evacuated is not very clear to us here because, yes, the Hezbollah is strong within this region, but Baalbek is not a city that where only Hezbollah members are living. There are also normal families, civilians living in the city. And like we mentioned before, also the ancient ruins, the ancient Roman temples are located in the heart of the city.
I'd like to get your take on a different angle here. We've heard from Hezbollah's new leader, Naim Qassem, today. He said he would accept a ceasefire deal with Israel under what he called acceptable conditions. Do we know what those conditions might be?
Naim Qassem didn't really specify what he means with these conditions, but what we can translate his statement into is that he means that Hezbollah do not want to abide to the conditions that Israel leaked earlier a couple of days ago. According to some media reports, the Israeli government has sent a draft paper to the US government claiming certain conditions for a potential ceasefire deal. 2 of these conditions are that the Israeli army wants to be the ones enforcing the withdrawal of Hezbollah from South Lebanon, and the Israeli army also wants the freedom to move and operate in the Lebanese airspace. These 2 conditions are against the UN Resolution 1701 that has been stated by so many Western diplomats so far. And I think how we can understand Naim Qassem is really that he doesn't want to abide to these rules. The people here in Lebanon followed Qassem's speech quite closely, not only because of his opinion concerning a ceasefire deal, but rather because it was his first speech as the new leader of Hezbollah, and people were comparing it on the social media to Hassan Nasrallah, the leader before, who has been killed, and many said that he is not as charismatic as Nasrallah was.
Thank you very much for your reporting. That's Stella Mena in Beirut. The United Nations has warned Israel that it will be responsible for the needs of Palestinian refugees under international law if Israel bans the UN aid agency UNRWA. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said the law passed by Israel's parliament banning UNRWA would have devastating consequences for Palestinians. The aid organisation caters to almost 6 million people across the Middle East. Emily Gordine reports.
This is Jalazun, a refugee camp north of Ramallah that was established in 1949 and one that is run by UNRWA, like so many others in the occupied Palestinian territories.
Here we are at the old market of the Jalazun refugee camp. This is the market that used to be full of tents. This first generation came here, and this is where they started their life as refugees.
With decades of help from UNRWA, Palestinians turned tents into houses. Wissam Ramaha has lived here since he was a child. Life here would be very difficult without UNRWA. It provides many of the basics.
This is the health clinic. It's the only one here. There's no other place in the refugee camp. Elderly people come here and benefit from it. This is where they get all their medication.
Many Palestinian refugees continue to depend on UNRWA for housing, food, water, social services, healthcare and education. If the new Israeli law takes effect, all those services could collapse. Israel says UNRWA workers were involved in the Hamas-led October 7 terror attacks of last year, which left 1,200 people dead in Israel and 250 taken into Gaza as hostages. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the organisation must be held accountable for its part. The accusation against UNRWA prompted many donor countries to pause their funding. That funding resumed after the UN carried out an investigation and UNRWA fired 9 staff members. The Israeli government has not yet said how else it will provide for the millions of Palestinians in the occupied territories. Something lawyers say it has to do.
There's an occupying power. Under international laws of occupation, of belligerent occupation, it has the duty that is basically composed of 3 sub-duties to provide humanitarian aid, to provide for any goods that the occupied people need for their survival.
But for many here, banning UNRWA is also about their identity. The UN body was created for Palestinian refugees. Its existence is seen as embodying international recognition of that status. Mahfouz Safi was born a refugee in May 1948, after his family was expelled from what is now central Israel during the First Arab-Israeli War, which saw the establishment of the Israeli state. Palestinians call it the Nakba, catastrophe.
It's a political decision to erase the issue of refugees, specifically the Palestinian refugees. We have the right, according to the existing resolutions of the United Nations, to return to our homeland and establish the Palestinian state based on the partition plan of 1947. And Israel is making every effort to erase or disable UNRWA so that the world forgets that there is a resolution that witnessed the Nakba of the Palestinian people.
UNRWA's work here is now in doubt, and with it the shape of the future for millions of Palestinians who depend on it.